The rain drizzled lightly on the cracked pavement as Officer Brad Holloway adjusted his belt and folded his arms, a smug grin creeping across his face. Another day, another arrest. The woman in front of him stood calm despite the handcuffs digging into her wrists. She didn't argue, didn't cry, didn't plead, just held her head high, her deep brown eyes locked onto his with an unsettling steadiness. "Got yourself in some trouble, huh?" Brad scoffed, shaking his head. "Should have thought twice before messing around in the wrong place." Bystanders gathered, whispering among themselves. Some pulled out their phones, recording the scene. A few murmured protests, but no one dared step forward. The woman's sharp black suit was slightly damp from the rain, her polished heels still standing firm on the sidewalk. There was something about her presence, something off. But Brad didn't care. To him, this was just another routine arrest. Then, with slow precision, the woman sighed and turned her gaze toward him. "You might want to check my ID," she said, her voice steady but laced with something unreadable. Brad chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh yeah? And who exactly are you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she lifted her cuffed hands just enough to reach into her jacket pocket. His partner tensed, hand hovering over his holster, but the woman didn't flinch. She pulled out a sleek, leather wallet and let it fall open. Brad's smirk faltered. His eyes darted to the golden badge inside. The letters FBI glistened under the dim streetlights. The murmuring crowd suddenly fell silent. His throat went dry. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He had just arrested a federal agent. Before he could react, his radio crackled, breaking the silence. "Holloway, do you copy? We need backup at..." But Brad wasn't listening. His mind raced, his confidence shattered in an instant. The woman, still eerily calm, tilted her head. "Now," she said, her voice like a blade slicing through the tension, "are you going to remove these cuffs, or should I make a call?" Meanwhile, across town, a different kind of tension was unfolding. Jamal, a 17-year-old high school senior, was exhausted. He had spent the day juggling classes, part-time work, and football practice. When he finally got on the packed bus, he could barely keep his eyes open. He sank into a seat near the middle, letting out a deep breath. But just as the bus lurched forward, he noticed her, a pregnant woman, standing near the front, gripping a metal pole for balance. No one moved. No one offered her a seat. Without hesitation, Jamal stood. "Ma'am, you can take my seat," he said, stepping aside. She looked up, surprised. "Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you." He gave her a small nod and grabbed onto the pole, steadying himself. It was just a small act of kindness, nothing special, nothing grand. But as the ride continued, he felt a gentle tap on his arm. The woman was holding out a small, folded note. "Take this," she said softly. Jamal hesitated but took it, slipping it into his pocket. He didn't think much of it at first. Probably just a thank you. But later that night, when he finally pulled out the crumpled paper and unfolded it, his breath caught in his throat. The message inside would change his life forever. Jamal stared at the note in his hands, his fingers tightening around the edges. His heart pounded as he read the words over and over, making sure he wasn't imagining things. The bus ride home had been like any other, just another long, tiring evening after a packed day. He never expected something as simple as offering his seat to a stranger would lead to this. The message was short but heavy. "Meet me at this address tomorrow at 4 p.m. Don't tell anyone. LW." Jamal swallowed hard, glancing at the bottom of the note where an address was scribbled in neat handwriting. The name, the secrecy, it all felt strange. Who was this woman? Why was she asking to meet him? Was this some kind of setup? He stuffed the note into his pocket and looked around his small bedroom. The faded posters of basketball players on his walls suddenly seemed less important compared to whatever this was. He could hear his mom moving around in the kitchen, humming softly. His younger sister giggled at the TV in the other room. Everything in his life was normal, but this was not. Sleep didn't come easy that night. His mind ran in circles, playing out different scenarios. What if she needed help? What if this was a mistake? Or worse, What if he had just stepped into something way bigger than he could handle? Meanwhile, across the city, Officer Holloway was pacing in his living room, his jaw clenched. He had made arrests before, plenty of them, but this was different. The woman's FBI badge was burned into his memory. He had been so sure of himself, so quick to assume. The way she had looked at him, completely unshaken, made his stomach churn. He had tried to brush it off, but the moment he got back to the precinct, things had gotten even stranger. His captain had called him into the office, his expression unreadable. "Officer Holloway," the captain said, tossing a file onto the desk. "Do you have any idea who you just put in cuffs today?" Brad's throat was dry as he picked up the file. The name on the document sent a chill down his spine. Agent Naomi Walker, FBI.
He didn't speak.
He just flipped through the pages, scanning line after line. Agent Walker wasn't just some federal agent. She was high up, involved in cases way above his pay grade. And worse, there was something classified about her records. Entire sections of the file were blacked out. The captain leaned forward, his voice low. "I don't know what kind of trouble you just walked into, but I suggest you stay far away from it. Consider this incident forgotten." Forgotten? Brad wanted to laugh. How was he supposed to forget the way her cold stare had cut through him? How was he supposed to forget the look on his partner's face when they realized what they had done? He had messed up.
Badly.
And now he was in the middle of something he didn't understand. As he left the office, his thoughts raced. If she was FBI, why had she been there in the first place? And why wasn't she fighting back when he arrested her? Something wasn't adding up. Agent Naomi Walker, on the other hand, was exactly where she wanted to be. She sat in a dimly lit room, her hands free now, flipping through a stack of documents on the table before her. Her expression was unreadable as she scanned reports, her mind focused. She had let herself get arrested. She had allowed Officer Holloway to believe he had control. But in reality, she was the one pulling the strings. This was bigger than him, bigger than just another mistaken arrest. She had been following a lead, one that had led her straight into that moment on the street. Now she needed to move carefully. Back in Jamal's neighborhood, the morning sun cast a golden light through his window, waking him earlier than usual. His body was tired, but his mind was sharp, still replaying the moment the woman had handed him that note. He knew he had two choices. He could ignore it, pretend it never happened, and go about his normal routine. Or he could go to that address and see what this was all about. By the time the clock hit 3:30 p.m., his decision was made. Jamal grabbed his backpack and left, telling his mom he was heading to a friend's house. He didn't want to lie, but he also couldn't explain something he didn't even understand himself. The address led him to a part of town he wasn't familiar with. The houses were bigger here, quieter. He walked up the stone steps of a brownstone and hesitated before knocking. A few seconds later, the door opened slightly, just enough for him to see the woman from the bus standing there. But now, she wasn't just some tired pregnant lady. She was poised, alert. Her sharp green eyes studied him carefully. "You came," she said, almost like she was testing him. Jamal nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat.
"Yeah."
"What's this about?" She glanced up and down the street before opening the door wider. "Come inside. We don't have much time." Jamal hesitated. Every instinct told him this was a bad idea, but something in her tone, something urgent, pushed him forward. He stepped inside, and the door shut behind him with a quiet click. Everything in his life was about to change. But he didn't know that yet. Jamal stepped inside, his pulse quickening as the door clicked shut behind him. The house was quiet, too quiet. The air smelled faintly of lavender, but there was something else, something heavier that he couldn't quite place. The woman moved smoothly across the room, her posture straight, her steps precise. It was like she wasn't just some ordinary person, there was an energy about her, something controlled. She motioned for him to sit on the couch, and he hesitated before lowering himself onto the edge, his muscles still tense. His mind screamed at him to be cautious. "So," he said, clearing his throat, "what's this all about?" The woman didn't answer right away. Instead, she studied him, like she was measuring his reaction before deciding what to say. Finally, she took a breath. First, let me properly introduce myself. My name is Lillian Walker. Jamal's brows knitted together. That name, it sounded familiar. His fingers curled slightly, and then it hit him. Walker. The same last name as the FBI agent who had been arrested. Coincidence? He doubted it. You're related to that lady on the news, he said, his voice careful. The one that cop arrested. Lillian's lips pressed into a thin line. She's my sister. Jamal felt his stomach twist. He wasn't sure what he expected, but it definitely wasn't that. So why am I here? What does this have to do with me? Lillian sat across from him, her hands resting on her lap. Because I need your help, Jamal. His breath hitched. Help? With what? She leaned forward slightly, her green eyes locking onto his. My sister was on an assignment before she got arrested. It wasn't random. She put herself in that position on purpose, following a lead. Jamal shook his head. Okay, but what does that have to do with me? Lillian exhaled slowly. I was at that bus stop for a reason, Jamal. I knew you'd be there. His chest tightened.
What? How?
You were already part of this before you even knew it, she said. Your name came up in an investigation months ago. Jamal felt his pulse pound in his ears. Investigation? I don't know anything about any of this. Lillian studied him again, searching for something in his face before she continued. Your father, he worked in security, didn't he? Jamal froze.
His mouth felt dry.
Yeah, before he passed. Lillian nodded like she already knew the answer. He was working for a private firm, correct? Not a police department, not a government agency, but a private security company. Jamal didn't like where this was going.
Yeah.
What does that have to do with anything? She hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. Did he ever talk about his job? About any cases he was working on? Jamal frowned, shaking his head. Not really. He just said it was long hours, boring work. Why? Lillian leaned back, tapping her fingers against the armrest. Because your father wasn't just working security. He was part of something bigger. He had access to files, information, things that powerful people didn't want getting out. Jamal's stomach turned. That's not possible. He was just a regular guy. He wouldn't be involved in anything dangerous. Lillian gave him a knowing look. Maybe that's what he wanted you to think. Jamal felt his head spinning. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. His dad was a good man. He went to work, came home, watched football, joked around with them. He wasn't some secret keeper. Lillian let the silence hang for a moment before speaking again. I don't expect you to believe me right away. But tell me this, before your dad passed, did anything seem off? Like he was worried about something? Jamal hesitated. He thought back to those last few months before the accident. His dad had been tired, more distant than usual. He'd take long walks at night, checking the locks twice, glancing out the windows. But that didn't mean anything, did it? I don't know, Jamal admitted. He was stressed, I guess. But that doesn't mean he was hiding something. Lillian sighed. Jamal, your father had information that could put powerful people in danger. And my sister was getting close to the same truth. That's why she let herself be arrested. It was a move to buy time. Someone is trying to cover something up, and they'll do whatever it takes to keep it buried. Jamal felt a cold weight settle in his chest. And you think I have something to do with this? I think you might know more than you realize, Lillian said softly. Maybe something your dad left behind. Notes, files, anything. Jamal swallowed hard. He had never really gone through his dad's old things. His mom had boxed up most of his stuff, tucking it away in the attic. Could there really be something there? Something that connected all of this? His hands clenched into fists. And if I find something, Lillian's face was serious. Then we'll have our proof. And we'll know exactly who's been pulling the strings. Jamal didn't answer. His heart was racing, his thoughts tangled. He had walked into this house thinking it was just some strange favor for a woman on a bus. Now he was being told that his father might have been part of something bigger, something dangerous. He didn't know what was worse, the idea that Lillian was right, or the fact that a part of him believed her. Jamal's pulse pounded in his ears. He could hear the car doors outside shutting, the heavy footsteps approaching the house. Leah moved fast, grabbing a small black bag from behind the couch and slinging it over her shoulder. Her calm, precise movements sent a clear message. She had been expecting this. Jamal's breath was shallow. "Who are they?" he whispered. Leah glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "Not the kind of people you want knocking on your door." She strode to a bookshelf near the back wall and pressed her hand against the wood. A faint click sounded, and suddenly, the entire shelf shifted, revealing a hidden doorway. Jamal's eyes widened. "What?" "No time," she cut him off. "We go now." A loud knock echoed through the house, sharp and demanding. "Miss Walker, we know you're in there." A deep voice called out. "Open the door. Now." Jamal's hands curled into fists. Everything inside him screamed that this was wrong, that he shouldn't be running. But Leah grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the secret passage. "Move," she whispered fiercely, "or we don't make it out." His feet finally obeyed. They slipped through the hidden doorway just as another knock, harder, more aggressive, rattled the walls. Leah shut the passage behind them, and they plunged into darkness. Jamal could hear the faint creak of the floorboards above them as the front door burst open. Heavy boots stomped into the house, men moving fast, searching. His breathing was uneven, and Leah squeezed his arm in warning. "Stay quiet." They moved through the narrow tunnel, each step uncertain in the darkness. The air was thick with dust, the walls cold and damp. It smelled like old earth, like something forgotten. Then, distant voices filtered through the walls. "Where is she?" one of the men demanded. Another voice, lower and more controlled, answered. "She won't get far. She has the boy with her." Jamal's stomach tightened.
They were talking about him.
Leah pressed forward, guiding him deeper through the passage. "We have to get out before they find the back exit," she whispered. Jamal wanted to ask who they were, what they wanted, why his father had anything to do with this, but he couldn't risk making a sound. The tunnel stretched on until they reached a metal ladder bolted into the wall. Leah climbed first, pushing open a heavy grate above them. Moonlight poured in as she hauled herself out. Jamal followed, his muscles tensed with fear. They emerged in a narrow alley behind the house, shielded by tall brick walls. The night air was crisp, but there was no time to breathe. Leah grabbed his wrist and pulled him forward. "Where are we going?" he hissed. "Somewhere safe," she muttered. Behind them, the sound of shattering glass broke the silence. The men were tearing through the house. It wouldn't be long before they realized Leah and Jamal were gone. Leah yanked open the door of a parked sedan, and Jamal barely had time to slide in before she turned the ignition. The car roared to life, tires screeching as she sped away from the alley. Jamal gripped the seat, his mind racing. "You had a car ready?" Leah's jaw tightened. "I had a feeling I'd need it." Jamal's head spun. His life had been normal just yesterday. Now he was on the run with a stranger, being hunted by men who seemed to know more about his past than he did. As they sped through the city, he finally blurted, "What do they want with me?" Leah's grip on the wheel tightened. "They think you know something." Jamal shook his head. "But I don't. I don't even remember my dad. How could I know anything?" Leah's expression was grim. Because sometimes, what you don't know can be just as dangerous as what you do. Jamal swallowed hard. None of this made sense. He was just a high school senior, trying to keep his grades up and help his mom. He had never done anything to attract this kind of attention. But now, people were after him. People willing to break into homes in the middle of the night. His fingers dug into the seat as he turned to Leah. "Where are we going?" She exhaled sharply. "There's someone who might have answers. But we have to be careful. There are only a few people left I trust." Jamal's skin prickled. "And if we can't trust them?" Leah didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her voice was quiet. "Then we're already out of options." As the city lights blurred past, Jamal had a sinking feeling that his life, as he knew it, was gone forever. And he still didn't even know why. Miles away, in a darkened surveillance room, Officer Brad Holloway sat in silence, staring at a grainy security feed of Leah Walker's house. He had managed to tap into a private feed, pulling footage from a hidden street camera. He watched as the black SUV had arrived, as men in dark suits stormed inside.
His gut twisted.
These weren't regular officers. And they definitely weren't feds. He didn't know who they were. But he did know one thing. Jamal Thompson was in the middle of something dangerous. And if Brad didn't figure it out soon, the kid might not make it out alive. The highway stretched before them, dark and seemingly endless. The hum of the tires against the pavement was the only sound between Jamal and Leah. He had too many questions, but his throat felt tight, like speaking them out loud would make everything more real. Leah's fingers tapped against the steering wheel, her eyes darting to the rearview mirror every few seconds. She wasn't just driving, she was watching, waiting. Jamal finally broke the silence. "You never answer my question." Leah glanced at him, but didn't speak. "Who exactly do you trust?" he pressed. "And who are we going to see?" She sighed. "There's a man. He worked with my sister before everything. He was one of her few allies." She hesitated. "At least, I hope he still is." Jamal's stomach twisted at the uncertainty in her voice. He didn't like putting his life in the hands of strangers, especially when he wasn't even sure what they wanted from him. Before he could ask anything else, Leah suddenly cursed under her breath. Her grip on the wheel tightened. Jamal's heart pounded. What's wrong?" She didn't answer. Instead, she slammed her foot on the gas, and the car surged forward. Jamal twisted in his seat and looked behind them. That's when he saw it.
Headlights.
A black SUV, gaining on them fast. "They found us," Leah muttered. Jamal's pulse spiked.
How?
"I don't know," she hissed. "But they're not here for friendly chat." The SUV was closing in, its high beams glaring through their rear windshield. Jamal's breath came in short gasps. "What do we do?" Leah's eyes flicked to an exit ramp up ahead. "Hold on." Before Jamal could brace himself, she swerved hard to the right, tires screeching as they shot onto the ramp. The car fishtailed, but Leah corrected it fast, gripping the wheel like a lifeline. The SUV followed, relentless. "They're not backing off," Jamal shouted. "They won't," Leah snapped. "Not until they have us." The road narrowed, leading them into a more rural area. Dense trees on both sides, no streetlights. Just darkness. Jamal felt sick. This is a dead end. There's nowhere to go. Leah exhaled sharply. Exactly. Jamal's eyes widened. What? She didn't answer. Instead, she yanked the wheel again, sending them flying onto an overgrown dirt path that barely looked like a road. Branches scraped against the sides of the car. The SUV hesitated for a second before following. "Leah," Jamal started, but before he could say another word, she slammed the brakes. The sudden stop sent Jamal jerking forward, his seatbelt digging into his chest. His heart pounded as he looked at her, eyes wild. "Why are we stopping?" She didn't answer. Instead, she unbuckled her seatbelt and grabbed something from under her seat, a small black device with a blinking red light. Jamal's gut clenched. "What is that?" Leah exhaled. "Insurance." She twisted in her seat and watched the SUV barrel closer. Then, just before it reached them, she pressed a button. A deafening explosion rocked the night. Jamal flinched as a burst of fire erupted behind them. The SUV skidded wildly, caught in the force of the blast. It veered sideways, crashing into the trees. Smoke and flames billowed from its engine. Jamal's breath came in ragged gulps. "Did you just?" Leah was already moving. "Come on." She shoved open her door and ran into the trees. Jamal had no choice but to follow, his legs shaky beneath him. They sprinted through the dense brush, the only light coming from the distant glow of the wreckage. Jamal's mind raced. How had Leah planted that? How had she known they would be followed? But before he could ask, she grabbed his arm and yanked him to a stop. "Get down." They crouched behind a thick fallen tree just as more headlights appeared in the distance. More cars. More men. Jamal's chest tightened. "There's more of them." Leah nodded grimly. "And they're not giving up." They waited, barely breathing, as figures emerged from the vehicles. These weren't just officers or agents. They moved differently, more precise, more dangerous. Jamal clenched his fists. What do they want with me? Leah didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled something from her pocket, a small, folded piece of paper. She hesitated before pressing it into his hand. Jamal frowned, his fingers tightening around the paper. What is this? Leah's voice was low. Something my sister left for you. Jamal's heart pounded. Me? Leah nodded. Before she got arrested, she knew this was coming. And she knew you'd be in the middle of it. Jamal's throat went dry.
How?
Leah's eyes darkened. Because, Jamal, your father wasn't just involved. He was the reason all of this started. Jamal felt his world tilt. His father? The man he barely remembered? The man he had thought was just a regular security guard? No, he whispered, shaking his head. That's not possible. Leah's gaze was unwavering. It's more than possible. And if we don't get out of here, you won't live long enough to learn the truth. The men in the distance spread out, flashlights sweeping through the trees. They were searching, hunting. Jamal's breath was unsteady as he unfolded the paper in his hands. His eyes scanned the words, written in hurried, slanted handwriting. If you're reading this, they've found you. But you're not alone. Trust Leah. Find the key. And whatever you do, don't believe their lies. Jamal's hands shook. His father had written this. Before he could fully process what it meant, Leah tugged on his sleeve. Jamal, we have to move.
Now.
Jamal swallowed hard and stuffed the note into his pocket. He didn't know what was happening. He didn't know who to trust. But he knew one thing for sure. Nothing in his life had ever been real. And now, the truth could cost him everything. Jamal's chest rose and fell in sharp, uneven breaths as he followed Leah deeper into the forest. The branches above them stretched like clawed hands, blocking the moonlight. Behind them, the men moved carefully, methodically, their flashlights cutting through the trees. They weren't in a rush. They knew there was nowhere to run. Jamal's fingers tightened around the note in his pocket. Find the key. But what key? And why did his father leave a warning instead of answers? Leah suddenly stopped, holding up a hand. Jamal froze beside her. He followed her gaze to an old, abandoned structure hidden behind thick vines. It looked like an old service station, rusted and forgotten. This is it, Leah whispered. Jamal frowned. What do you mean? She didn't answer. Instead, she ran to the rusted door, pressing her hand against the frame. She let out a frustrated breath before kneeling and brushing leaves away from the ground. A second later, her fingers found a small metal panel. She pulled it open, revealing a keypad. Jamal's pulse pounded. What is this place? Leah's fingers flew over the keys. Somewhere my sister used to come. A place your father trusted. The keypad beeped, and with a groan, the metal door slid open just enough for them to squeeze inside. Leah didn't hesitate. She grabbed Jamal's wrist and pulled him into the darkness. The air was damp, thick with dust and something metallic. The moment the door sealed behind them, all outside noise vanished. Jamal took a step forward, but Leah placed a hand on his chest, stopping him. Stay still, she whispered. Before he could ask why, dim lights flickered on, casting a dull glow over the room. Jamal's stomach clenched. The walls were covered in old photographs, maps, and documents. Some were yellowed with age, others marked with red ink. But his eyes locked onto one image in the center of the wall. His father. Jamal stepped forward, his legs unsteady. His father stood in the picture, dressed in a uniform, but not the kind of uniform Jamal remembered from old family photos. This one was different. It wasn't security gear. It was tactical. Jamal turned to Leah. What was my father involved in? Leah exhaled, rubbing a hand down her face. Your father wasn't just any security guard. He was part of something bigger, a classified unit that handled covert intelligence. She gestured to the papers. But something went wrong. He got too close to something. Something dangerous. Jamal's stomach churned. And they killed him for it. Leah hesitated. Maybe. Or maybe he disappeared before they could. Jamal's world tilted. He had spent years believing his father was gone, never questioning it.
But now,
Leah moved to an old metal cabinet, yanking open a drawer. Inside, she pulled out a small black box. She placed it on a nearby table and nodded to Jamal. This might be the key her father was talking about. Jamal reached out, his fingers trembling. He lifted the lid. Inside was a single flash drive. Nothing else. His brows furrowed. This is it. Leah nodded. Whatever your father found, it's on there. Jamal swallowed hard. He had no idea what he was about to uncover. But before he could say anything, a loud bang echoed through the room.
the door.
Leah grabbed Jamal and shoved him behind her as the metal door groaned under the pressure. "They found us," she whispered. Jamal's heartbeat roared in his ears. Another bang. Then another. The door wouldn't hold. Leah turned to him. "No matter what happens, you run. Do you hear me?" Jamal shook his head. "I'm not leaving you." She gripped his shoulders. "You don't have a choice. If they get that drive, everything your father worked for is gone." The door burst open. Dark figures swarmed in, weapons raised. Leah moved fast, slamming the nearest man into the wall, but there were too many. Jamal turned to run, but a voice froze him in place. "Don't move, kid." Jamal stiffened. The man who stepped forward wasn't like the others. He was older, his face lined with experience. His dark eyes locked onto Jamal with something cold. Leah struggled against two men holding her back. "Don't listen to him, Jamal." The man silenced her with a glance before turning back to Jamal. "You have no idea what you're involved in, do you?" Jamal clenched his fists. "I know my father didn't deserve to die." The man exhaled, tilting his head. "Your father isn't dead." Jamal's breath caught in his throat. The world seemed to freeze around him. "What?" he whispered. The man took a slow step forward. "Your father went off the grid for a reason. He had something we needed, and instead of handing it over, he vanished. We've been looking for him ever since." He nodded toward the flash drive. "And now, we finally have what we need." Jamal's mind reeled. His father alive? He shook his head. If he's alive, then where is he? The man's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "That's what we're about to find out." Jamal's grip tightened around the flash drive. He had spent his entire life believing his father was gone. Now, standing in a room filled with the pieces of his past, he realized the truth was far more complicated. And he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. Jamal's fingers tightened around the flash drive, his heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear anything else. His father was alive? The words echoed in his mind, making it impossible to focus on anything else. Everything he had ever believed about his life, about his father's disappearance, was unraveling right in front of him. The man took another step forward, his voice calm but firm. "Hand it over, kid. You don't know what you're dealing with." Leah struggled against the grip of the two men holding her back. "Jamal, don't," she gasped. "You can't trust them." Jamal knew she was right. These weren't the kind of men who gave straight answers. They were here to clean up loose ends, and now, he was one of them. His father had spent years hiding from them. If he gave them what they wanted, what would happen next? He looked down at the flash drive in his hand, his thumb brushing over the cold metal. If this really held the truth, he needed to make sure it didn't fall into the wrong hands. He glanced at Leah, and in that split second, she gave the smallest nod. A signal. A choice. Jamal made his decision. In one swift motion, he lunged backward, twisting as he threw the flash drive across the room. It skidded under an old, rusted cabinet, disappearing from sight. The man's eyes darkened. Wrong move. Before Jamal could react, the man grabbed him by the collar, yanking him forward. Jamal struggled, but the grip was too strong. Leah fought harder against the men holding her, kicking one hard enough to make him stumble. She used the moment to slam her elbow into the other's ribs, freeing herself. Jamal twisted, bringing his knee up sharply. It connected, and the man grunted in pain, loosening his grip just enough for Jamal to break free. He scrambled toward the cabinet, but another agent was already reaching for the flash drive. Leah moved fast. She grabbed a rusted metal pipe from the floor and swung it with full force. It collided with the agent's arm, sending him staggering backward. The flash drive slipped from his fingers. Jamal dove for it, snatching it up just as Leah grabbed his arm. "We have to go." They sprinted toward the back of the room. Leah shoved open a door, revealing a narrow tunnel that led into the darkness. No time to think. No time to question. They ran. Behind them, the men recovered, their voices shouting in frustration. The sound of gunfire rang out, bullets ricocheting off the metal walls. Jamal ducked, his lungs burning as they raced through the tunnel. It seemed endless, twisting and turning until, finally, they reached the end, a rusted metal grate. Leah didn't hesitate. She rammed into it with her shoulder, forcing it open just enough for them to squeeze through. The second they tumbled out, they were met with the cool night air. They were outside. Jamal gulped down deep breaths, his heart still racing. Leah grabbed his wrist and pulled him toward the dense trees. "We need to keep moving." Jamal followed, his legs aching, but he pushed forward. They ran until the sounds of their pursuers faded into the distance. Only then did they finally stop, collapsing against a fallen log. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Only the sounds of their heavy breathing filled the air. Finally, Jamal looked down at the flash drive in his hands. It felt heavier than before, as if it carried the weight of everything he had just learned. Leah wiped the sweat from her forehead. "We need to find somewhere safe. We need to see what's on that drive." Jamal nodded. He knew there was no turning back now. Whatever his father had left behind, whatever secrets were buried inside this tiny device, it was up to him to uncover them. They made their way toward an old gas station miles away from the abandoned bunker. Leah used a burner phone to make a call. Within an hour, a black car pulled up. Inside was an older man, his face lined with exhaustion but his eyes sharp. Leah exhaled. "This is Agent Torres. He's one of the few we can trust." Torres gave Jamal a long look before nodding toward the car. "Let's go. We don't have much time." Jamal hesitated for only a second before sliding into the back seat with Leah. The car took off into the night. They arrived at a small, hidden safe house. The walls were lined with old maps and outdated equipment, but it was secure. Torres led them to a laptop and nodded at Jamal. "Let's see what your father left behind." Jamal plugged in the flash drive, his hands shaking. The screen flickered before a single video file appeared. He clicked on it. The screen showed a grainy video. A man sat in a dimly lit room, his face partially obscured by shadows. But Jamal recognized him instantly.
His father.
Jamal's breath caught in his throat. His father's voice came through the speakers, calm but urgent. "If you're watching this, it means I failed. It means they found me." He took a shaky breath. "But it also means you're still fighting." Jamal swallowed hard as his father continued. "I uncovered something I was never meant to see. Corruption. Betrayal. I tried to expose it, but they silenced me. So, I disappeared." He looked directly at the camera, his eyes filled with something that sent chills down Jamal's spine. "Jamal, if you're listening, you were never supposed to be part of this. But now you are." Jamal's fists clenched. His father exhaled. "There's a code buried inside this drive. It's the key to everything. If it gets into the wrong hands, it could destroy lives. But if you use it right, you can finish what I started." The video ended abruptly. The room was silent. Jamal stared at the dark screen, his mind spinning. His father had risked everything to hide the truth. And now it was up to him to decide what to do with it. Torres placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder. "This isn't over, kid. But you don't have to do this alone." Jamal took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything settle onto his shoulders. He thought about his mother, about Leah, about all the lies he had been told. No more running. No more hiding. He met Leah's gaze and nodded. It was time to finish what his father started.